Honda has a goal of releasing electric vehicles with solid-state batteries by late 2020s. Are you still on track to deliver those targets?
We are going to introduce electrified vehicle 27 model, out of which 19 is EV.
In the future, battery EV is not just the one solution. We believe there are multi-solutions to suit for each category on each customer's individual needs and wants.
Ford knew what was coming for them on Wednesday if we didn't get a deal. That was checkmate. On day 40 of the stand-up strike, we reached a historic agreement.
So this is an unquestioned victory for the UAW. They got a good chunk of what they were actually asking for in these negotiations.
Ford coming out missing analyst estimates here. The share's down 5%. Earnings per share from Ford at 39 cents versus the 47 cents that analysts had been anticipating here.
All that and more, so let's get to it. In the pre-market on Friday morning, Tesla stock is up a little over 2%. There's no telling which direction the stock will go. For the week, it's been down over 3%. Is the selling pressure destined to continue? Or will some of these individuals start covering shorts?
Honda has a goal of releasing electric vehicles with solid-state batteries by late 2020s. Are you still on track to deliver those targets?
A pilot assembly line will begin operation in 2024. Once the line is fully operational, maybe next fall, we will be able to verify the technology and the production capability. Over the next few years, we'll prove the setup, and we hope to go into mass production in late 2020s.
Last year, you announced Honda and GM will partner to bring affordable EVs to the market. What is the progress there?
Honda and GM started jointly developing affordable EVs last year. But after studying this for a year, we decided that this would be difficult as a business. So at the moment, we're ending development of an affordable EV. The project itself has been cancelled. GM and Honda will search for a solution separately.
That should give you an idea of just how hard this really is. An affordable battery electric vehicle seems impossible to many auto manufacturers. Legacy auto manufacturers. Could it be that their attention is divided? Just because you're an all-star in one sport doesn't mean you can transfer over to another and continue that same success. I'm pretty sure LeBron James would have made an excellent tight end for the Cleveland Browns. Serviceable even. Would he have been a Hall of Famer?
You mentioned some of those difficulties. Can you tell us what some of them were?
There are many factors, but in the end, when we studied the business feasibility, for example, marketability or cost or product attractiveness, we didn't see great potential there. But this is only one of many projects that we've been working together. We would like to continue to have comprehensive discussions with GM.
China is surpassing Japan as the world's top exporting country in terms of autos. You've said growth in China has exceeded expectations in the first half of this year. What's Honda's strategy when it comes to both selling in China and also competing against Chinese automakers?
In the Chinese auto market, EV and new energy vehicle are the fast-growing segments. With us being late to the EV game and fierce price-cutting competition due to already crowded market space, we're facing a challenging situation. But we have plans for 3 new models next year and to expand our lineup to a total of 10 by 2027. By offering a wider product lineup, we hope to improve our EV business, although it'll take some time to get there.
Not sure how that strategy is going to play out, but not my job on the line.
Let's start off with what you're planning to actually unveil at the Japan Mobility Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm very happy to have this Japan Mobility Show to be done after 4 years. From the Nissan, we want to make sure to enrich the people's life in the future. And we have 5 concept cars today at the Japan Mobility Show. And one of our new concept that we have for the motorsports, we call this a Hyperforce, which can enable further the demand of the people for the future. We cannot forget to say that the Nissan is one of the pioneers of the EV, and we do have a lot of the connectivity as well as the intelligent mobility, and but last but not least, most important is all solid-state battery that we are putting as a concept for this car.
Prototypes are easy. Production at scale, harder than a motherfucker. And in case some of you kids don't know, Nissan had the Nissan Leaf, a pioneer in electric vehicles. Of course, it's the reason why electric vehicles have the bad rap of being a golf cart, unaesthetically pleasing and downright shit. But yeah, they are a pioneer of the electric vehicle. 5 concept cars. The odds of any of them seeing the light of day, slim to none. Nissan has a Batmobile in the background. I wonder who they're marketing that to. And then we hear the magic word of solid-state batteries. Tesla's on the cutting edge of battery electric vehicle technology. Talk about pioneering. They created the form factor 4680.
Fascinating that Nissan is actually leaning more and more into the EV space, whereas even right here in London and in the UK, you're starting to see the brakes, quite literally, pun not intended, being kind of slammed on the idea that that transition to EV can happen so quickly. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, for example, making those comments as well. Talk to us a little bit about the competitive nature of Nissan right now. You're up against China specifically, which is, of course, the leader in electrification around the world. What is Nissan doing to increase that competitiveness?
Yeah, let me first start with what Nissan is planning towards the 2030. We are going to introduce electrified vehicle 27 model, out of which 19 is EV. And we are very confident on how we want to further to bring their value to the customer. Of course, we need to be very careful what is happening on the market today as a competition, that we cannot ignore the situation, all the newcomers coming. There's a lot of competition we have seen everywhere. And one of the key areas that we are focusing is how we can make sure to secure the cost competitiveness while that the still electrification transition take a bit of more time.
Here's an idea. Maybe lower the number of models that you're going to bring to market. The complexity alone is going to send your overhead through the roof. Why would you do that to yourself? It's going to be hard enough to try to compete with Tesla's category killers, which perform better, they're cheaper, they have significantly more functionality, and an ecosystem that is designed to put the consumer at ease. And you offer choice?
But I think that the speed coming to the market is much faster than what we are expecting. And probably that the customer accessing to the EV price level will be going down. So we have to be prepared, and we are planning to get a cost competitiveness so that we can make our presence in the market. At the same time, how we can make sure to give the value beyond the vehicle through the electrified vehicle to our customer, and especially on the new generation also. That's where that we are testing our concept car and how we can deliver further the value beyond the vehicle to the customer in the future.
I mean, the fact that you're talking about bringing more value to the customer, bringing down the price point, accelerating the transition, this all seems like a very expensive prospect. Are you at all worried about the cost associated with it? Some of your global peers are pulling back. General Motors, for example, in the last 24, 48 hours has actively said we're pulling back on our EV strategy because of the costs. How can you afford it?
Well, we need to be carefully look at what is our midterm plan and beyond, and how we're going to make sure, for instance, like the alliance, we have the partner Renault, Mitsubishi, and it is very challenging to do it alone. Therefore, we decided ourselves to further invest in Ampere, where the Renault is going to create the EV and tech company. So we want to maximize our relation for the next stage, knowing that there will be a massive investment will require to satisfy the electrification, and how we can further optimize our cost side, including the production methodology that will require for the electrified vehicle. So we are making now on the midterm plan and beyond discussion with our partner, and that is where that we want to find the most optimum way how we can be competitive in the market while that we can make sure to deliver our value to the customer.
Sounds good, but everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth. Ask GM and Ford. This shit ain't easy. That faltering in conviction, whether it be from Ford, GM, or any of these legacy automotive manufacturers, is what's going to kill these companies. Everyone will go through hell trying to make EVs profitable. Everyone. Question is, do you stop, turn back, or keep going?
What's your outlook for domestic car sales and overseas car sales for Mazda in this upcoming year?
Well, sales space is pretty good so far up to today. We are about a 20% increase versus a year ago, but competition is getting more tougher. So let's see, next 6 months, we can continue to increase or not.
Tell us about your strategy in China. I mean, in July, you said that China is growing with a, quote, scary speed. How will you keep up the stiff competition there in China?
Well, we have a Chinese partner out there, and we have agreed to develop a battery EV with their technology. For next 1.5 years and 2 years, you will see Mazda will come back with those battery electric vehicles which are Mazda branded.
Partnering is one way to go, but what happens to Mazda when that partnership dissolves? GM and Honda, they had to part ways. Best of luck to Mazda in that future endeavor with their Chinese partner.
Well, it's no secret that Japan has been lagging behind when it comes to EVs and the EV race. Do you think it's possible for Japanese automakers to ever catch up?
I believe so. But in the future, battery EV is not just one solution. We believe there are multi-solutions to suit for each category on each customer's individual needs and wants.
When you spread yourself thin like that, there is no way that you could create something that is super efficient while bringing down the cost or make it super convenient for the consumer. And if you can't read the tea leaves, everything is transitioning to battery electric vehicles. Instead of focusing on hydrogen, hybrids, or whatever the there are multiple ways to drive down the cost in battery electric vehicles. But if you're not concentrating a majority of your energy into deciding on what those things are or need to be, you're going to fail. And that goes for any other powertrain you decide to pursue.
And Sarah, what usually happens after one automaker reaches an agreement with the UAW during these contract negotiations, that is basically the template that the other automakers are looking to with the UAW. But it takes, a week or two before those negotiations really heat up. The focus today is on Ford, and rightly so, as the company has agreed to a tentative contract, 4.5-year contract with the UAW. It's a costly one, and they knew it would be a costly one. 25% pay hike over 4.5 years for UAW members. It goes over 30% when you factor in cost of living adjustments. It will reduce and in some cases eliminate wage tiers within Ford, a big push for the UAW. And the temporary workers hired by Ford, that's an important component for automakers. Their pay will increase under this contract. Here's UAW President Shawn Fain.
Ford knew what was coming for them on Wednesday if we didn't get a deal. That was checkmate. On day 40 of the stand-up strike, we reached a historic agreement.
And by the way, the two strikes that were called on Monday and Tuesday certainly had an influence on Ford, increasing the pressure to get a deal done. As for Stellantis and General Motors, those talks continue. And guys, they want to get a deal done as quickly as possible. But again, the cadence usually is once one deal is done, takes a week or two before they pivot and another deal is close to being locked in.
Ford did what they had to do. Earnings right around the corner. Regardless of what the situation might be later on down the road, we can't lose our moneymaker now, not as we try to transition to battery electric vehicles.
Well, let's bring in Autoblog editor-in-chief Greg Miglior to discuss this more. So, Greg, first, talk about what this means then. Now that Ford has reached this tentative agreement, what does this mean for GM and Stellantis and the pressure that it puts on them?
Hey, good morning. So this is an unquestioned victory for the UAW. They got a good chunk of what they were actually asking for in these negotiations. And now for Ford, this is basically over. The workers are already being told to go back to work. So that restarts very important factories that build like the Ranger, the Bronco, the Super Duty. And that's a competitive advantage for Ford at this point. Now, if you're sitting in a C-suite for General Motors or Stellantis, you realize you're down factories, you're down inventory, critical vehicles are not being produced. So at this point, the other two of the Detroit three are going to be looking to make a deal. And the pattern essentially is there at this point. 25% wage increase with COLA, it gets up to over 30%. A lot of, I would say, touchstones that the UAW was looking for, they were able to get from Ford. And also, I think it's a fairly livable deal for Ford, too. The original, numbers we heard were like a 40% increase over the length of the contract. It seems like through negotiation, they were able to kind of bring that down a little bit. They made some concessions in other areas. And, to me, it seems like perhaps in the next few days, over the weekend, Ford and Stellantis are going to be very motivated to get this done.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're rounding the corner of this strike, hopefully coming to the final stretch when it comes to the 313 area code. But my granddaddy told me never count those chickens until they hatch. Regardless, good news for the UAW and the legacy automakers. It just may not feel like it.
Ford coming out missing analyst estimates here. The shares down 5%. Earnings per share from Ford at 39 cents versus the 47 cents that analysts had been anticipating here. And unsurprisingly, perhaps, the company's withdrawing its full-year guidance. That's because of what's been going on with the strike and the difficulty in predicting that. Of course, as we learned today, Ford and the United Auto Workers do have a tentative agreement. We don't know the full details of that yet. The UAW has released some of that, also among other things, talking about a 25% increase to pay for union workers over the next several years. But until that's ratified, because it's still subject to ratification, we don't know exactly the effect that's going to have on Ford. So withdrawing its forecast as we await that. So still looking through some of these numbers here, but that's what stands out to me out of the gate.
Yeah, that deal, I mean, listen, 25% pay hike over 4.5 years, 30% if you factor in the cost of living adjustments. How much that is going to cost Ford? The team at Wells Fargo put pencil to paper. By their math, they think it's probably going to be about $2 billion. As you noted, though, Juliet, that deal still needs to be ratified by rank and file. Analysts I know think that could probably take 1 to 2 weeks, perhaps. And then, of course, also GM and Stellantis, those talks continue. Does a Ford deal sort of help a deal get done there as well? And if so, I mean, listen, Sean Fain is going to keep pushing them very hard. Wedbush analyst Dan Ives was betting that a deal between the union, GM, and Stellantis, he thinks likely gets done over the next week. We'll see.
And after all of that push, revenue's up slightly, EPS down. Good job for Ford on getting that deal done. Put this behind you as fast as you possibly can, using as much of your ICE sales over the next few years to help fuel that transition. In conclusion, is it too late for the Japanese legacy automotive manufacturers to enter the game of EVs? Like a 40-year-old Olympian, the DNA is still there, but performance may differ from 20 years ago. And the big news in the US, Ford and the UAW have reached a tentative deal right before Ford's earnings, no less. This should provide an ample roadmap for both GM and Stellantis, although there are individual sticking points with each company. I expect further deals to be announced later next week. That's all I have for you today. Be easy. Peace.